invasive species is one way that humans have an impact on the environment. Um, Invasive species are species that are not natural to the area. They invade an area where they should not be. And a lot of times this happens because humans bring them into the population from other places. And the consequence of that is that it uses up the resources that the natural ecosystem relies on. What that does is it affects the food web and the energy transfer so that some species do not get what they need and eventually will die out as a result of that invasive species. We should have some examples of those in Michigan from our project. Some very common ones are the zebra mussels that are found now in Lake Michigan and the Asian carp that are in many rivers leading up to Lake Michigan. The Asian ash borer is a beetle that is found on lots of the trees that causes a lot of harm to plants. Other impacts that we have, some good, some bad. A lot of times we look at it as bad. Deforestation, the idea of cutting down a bunch of trees, we're taking away ecosystems and habitats for certain animals. The amount of trash and garbage and the amount of land that that takes up is definitely having an impact on the environment. There are some good things we can do as well, planting trees, etc. What I'd like you to do right here is research some ways that humans have a negative impact on the environment and add that to your notes on the very bottom. One of the biggest things that we hear about as far as human impact these days is something called the greenhouse effect and global warming. And there is a difference between those, and I want to make sure that you understand how they are different. First of all, the greenhouse effect is actually a natural process. It is a good thing to some extent because it allows our temperature on Earth to stay constant. If we did not have the greenhouse effect, it would be too cold and none of us would be able to survive. The idea behind the greenhouse effect is that some of the warmth, some of the radiation from the sun is kept inside of our atmosphere. It's not allowed to escape, and thus it warms up the Earth. When it gets to be a problem is when we are trapping too much of that energy inside the Earth, and that happens because of the gases that we put in the air. Gases like carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor. The more that we get trapped inside of the Earth, the more of the radiation, the higher the temperature becomes, which has a negative impact on the environment around us. So some of the causes, some of the specific things that we do are power plants, the pollution that we put into the air, cars, the pollution that escapes from our cars, aerosol propellant, refrigerants. A lot of those have been changed now to safer alternatives, but there are a lot of things that we are still doing that is contributing to the excess carbon dioxide and methane within that atmosphere that is then trapping the excess heat inside of the Earth. Over time, the greenhouse effect causes global warming. And when we say global warming, we are talking about an increase in the Earth's average temperature. So overall, the average temperature increasing over time, going up over time. There are some different consequences to that. Number one, average U.S. temperatures could rise another 3 to 9 degrees by the end of the century. That doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think about what those consequences would be, they could be very detrimental. You see there that as the temperature rises, the ice melts. That's taking away habitats and ecosystems that other animals rely on. It would also cause sea levels to rise as ice is melting. And those coastal areas, the cities along the coast of the oceans, would flood and potentially water would cover all of those cities. Heat waves, as the temperature goes up, heat waves will be more frequent, more intense. Droughts, wildfires will occur more often. So there are definitely lots of consequences, things to think about when it comes to greenhouse effect and global warming.